something that I have to confess. For those that didn't know, for the last 2 years, I've had the esteemed pleasure and joy of raising a little girl. I had a little boy, and don't get me wrong, the boy's fun. He's awesome. Noah is fantastic. He's very sweet. I looked at his mom earlier this week, and I'm like, he as far as the energy is concerned, he definitely got it from his mother. So no, he got it from me. He got it honestly. The kid can't sit still to save his life. He got that from me. He's super energetic. I mean, and that's just how he is. But they tell you that no two kids are alike, but maybe there's a part of us that believes that or doesn't believe that. And I'm like, Abby, my daughter, will be just like Noah. No, she's not. First of all, she's a girl. Second of all, she's Abby. And, people walk up, oh, how cute are you? And she'll go, no. Like, don't touch me. Don't look at me. She has what we call our dictator walk. She'll walk with her hands behind her back and just walk around. She walks like this in the house. She'll just walk around like this, just looking at the peasants. At ease, peasants, do what you will. We call it a little dictator walk. And I realized that now. I mean, there was a day where when it was me and Esther, we outnumbered the kids, and now the numbers are even. I've heard that parenting doesn't really take place until you get a second one, and I'm starting to believe that might be true. Because, things like getting ready, and it's in these moments that you truly appreciate. We all appreciate, if you've been there, we appreciate more so than ever what our parents went through with us. At the same time, we also look at our kids in these moments, and we pray and we hope that they're going to have kids that are just like them, maybe even crazier. And let's face it, our parents probably did the same thing, right? Like, I hope you have a son who does this. Jeff Allen jokes about, there's a comedian, his name's Jeff Allen, he jokes about it, how he talked to his dad once, and his dad just couldn't stop laughing. He's like, tell me again, Jeff Allen has 3 boys. He's like, tell me again what your 3 boys did to your $10,000 golf clubs. They painted what with your Armani suit? Tell me again, I don't need therapy. This is wonderful. I'm going to call you every week. I mean, that's what he would do. Because let's face it, I mean, the parenting life, and I'm experiencing it now, especially with the second one. Wow, it's an adventure and it's fun. I also realized this, that as they're growing and as I'm growing, as we're all growing, there's certain things that, again, the parents may laugh about, but you appreciate things your mom and your dad did for you. That in the moment you may have not totally appreciated. People talk about how their moms and dads are so uncool. And I've come to this theory. The reason that moms and dads are so uncool is they're spending all that money to make sure that you are not uncool. That's how it works. Something had to give, and they chose them. How sweet and awesome it was of your parents to decide that you are going to be cool. And for some of us, there's no amount of money that could have done it, but gosh, they tried. That's wonderful. That's great. That's spectacular. Here's the big one with parents, and we've all been there, and we all get there, whether we're parents or not, this point of maturity, where we have to decide what we want versus what we need. And sometimes what we want and what we need are not the same thing. For example, my son sometimes, what do you want for dinner? Skittles. I want Skittles. Yeah, don't we all? What do you want for dinner? I want Skittles. Okay, better yet, you need vegetables. That's what you need. You need vegetables. You need to grow. You need to be healthy. You cannot have Skittles for dinner. Then he eats one piece of broccoli. Can I have the Skittles now? No, you can't have the Skittles now. It's not how it works. Avonlea hates the high chair. She hates chairs in general. She doesn't like to sit down. As soon as you sit her down and she's like confined, the first word she'll say is out. Like, it's time to eat dinner. We're all going to eat dinner as a family and eat this meal. Out. You just sat down. We need to eat. Out. And she'll scream. And I'm like, oh. But you need to sit down. But she wants out. But we don't appreciate these things sometimes, so they come from a place of maturity. Again, we come to that point where we feel like we have to apologize to mom and dad for all the grief we caused them, because now we fully appreciate what they endured. What we want versus what we need. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what we want versus what we need. What we want versus what we need. What happens if those two clash? What happens if we want nothing at all, but man, we still need something? We're going to talk about an example of that today. If you guys got your Bibles, go to 2 Samuel chapter 9. 2 Samuel chapter 9. We'll be reading the whole chapter today. 2 Samuel chapter 9. A wonderful story of a guy named Mephibosheth Again, as I told the kids, that's not a common name you're going to see in the baby books. Not there. Again, you'll see a Genesis, you'll see a Josiah, you'll see a Joseph, you'll see a Lauren and an Abigail. You will not see Mephibosheth in the baby books. Like, again, Nebuchadnezzar, you will not find Nebuchadnezzar in the baby books. It's not a common name you hear nowadays, Mephibosheth. 2 Samuel chapter 9. If you're having a hard problem finding it, it's right next to 1 Samuel. So look for first, and then it's right next to the second. Yeah, so 2 Samuel chapter 9. And as we read along this, we'll have pauses, and we're going to give you like a breakdown of what's happening in this narrative, in this story, so we can all be on the same board. So 2 Samuel chapter 9, starting in verse 1. And David said, "Is there anyone left in the house of Saul that I might show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" We're going to stop right there. Can I give you a breakdown and a background of what's going on here? See, in Israel, in the nation of Israel, in its entire history up to this very day, there have only ever been, in a united kingdom of Israel, there have only been 3 kings. Now, there were multiple kings after the kingdom divided in half. That's a different story for a different day. They only had 3. First one was named Saul. Second one was named David. And then the third one was David's son named Solomon. They're the big 3. Now, David is now king of Israel. It should be noted, David was not one of Saul's descendants. This was not a kingdom he got courtesy of who his daddy was. It didn't work that way. Saul's kingdom and Saul's lineage ultimately fell. Now, Saul did that, and it happened mostly because of Saul's disobedience. Just a long story short, Saul's disobedience is what ultimately caused him and his whole family to fall. But here's where things got crazy. Because again, David says, "Can I do something for Jonathan's sake?" Jonathan was Saul's son. And for all intents and purposes, if things were going to go the way that we would think they would have gone as far as a kingdom rule and a kingdom lineage was concerned, Jonathan was going to be the next one in line. It seemed like a slam dunk. It was a done deal. And Jonathan was a really good guy. He was an awesome guy. So much so that the Bible talks about him and David. They were best friends. Talk about an awkward situation where Jonathan is supposed to be the heir to the kingdom. God has already declared that it's going to be David. Like, "Hi, I'm your competition. How do you do?" It's like the CEO of Burger King and the CEO of McDonald's trying to get together and be friends and golf every day. It would be odd. Like Lowe's and Home Depot are going to like get together and like have tea together. Like there's something wrong with this picture. It shouldn't be working out this way, but sure enough, it did. And not only were they like casual, awkward friends, they were fierce friends. Fierce friends. David looked after Jonathan. Jonathan looked after David. They were the best of friends. Some people would say they were thick as thieves. They were like peas and carrots. They were peanut butter and jelly. They were cookies and milk. This is the level of friendship they are. Some of us have friends who are so close that our children call them aunt and uncle. In my own life, my kids have an Uncle Greg. He's my best friend since middle school. They have an Uncle Greg. Their kids were, I would have called him Uncle Jonathan. They were this close. When Saul died, Jonathan died on the same day. Saul and Jonathan were in the same battle. The enemy overtook them, and they both died. And upon their passing and the fall of the house of Saul, David rises up and becomes the new king of Israel. And now at this moment, now that he is king, now that he has established himself, he looks at his kingdom, he looks at his court, he looks at his servants and his leaders and his generals, and he asks the question, "Is there anyone still left in the house of Saul that I might show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Verse 2, "Now there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David, and the king said to him, 'Are you Ziba?' And he said, 'I am your servant.' The king said, 'Is there not still someone in the house of Saul that I might show kindness of God to him?'" Understand what's happening here. We'll see ultimately that David's request was sincere. It was a sincere question. There was no malicious intent behind it. But we have to understand the culture of what's happening here. And we see it even to this day. When a new guy comes into office, when a new guy rises up to power, it was a common practice that they would clean house. For example, when Donald Trump becomes president, most, if not all, of Obama's administration, front office staff, secretary, they all go bye-bye. That's the end. But here's the thing. On a monumental level, it didn't work like that, like here's your pink slip and you go. In that day, in antiquity, it was a whole lot more harsher. What we would do is we would literally destroy and kill you and your family. That was standard operating procedure. And sadly, even in our modern day, we still see that. When Kim Jong-un took power, I saw this in a documentary a few weeks ago. When Kim Jong-un took power in North Korea, one of the first things he did was he killed about 85 to 100 of his political opponents, which included his own half-brother and his uncle. There can be no competition. There can be no question on who the authority is. It would be really bizarre if, again, in our modern day culture, Barack Obama is elected president and we line up Laura, we line up the Bush twins, we line up, Colin Powell and Condi Rice, and like Barack Obama would come with a giant broadsword and slay all of them on the White House lawn, right? Like we would think that's absolutely insane. In their modern time, that was normal. That was normal. I eliminate my competition, and I usually make an example of it too. So he gets a guy who used to work for Saul's house, and again, notice his response in the book itself. I am your servant. I used to work for the old guy. He's calling me up. I'm your guy. I'm loyal to you. I'm your best friend. Please don't kill me. Is there anyone that's left? Is there anyone of the house of Saul that I can show kindness of God to him? Ziba said to the king, there's still a son of Jonathan. He's crippled in his feet. King says to him, where is he? Ziba said to the king, he's in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lo-debar. And the king sent David and brought him from the house of Machir, son of Amiel, at Lo-debar. And Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. So consider the following. If you look at the context, Ziba's trying to talk him out of it. Ziba's talking him out of it. Again, they think there's malicious intent, and honestly, you can't blame them. Is there anyone still alive in Saul's house that I can show them some kindness? Yeah, kindness would be a quick death. That's what kindness would be. And he's like, well, there's this one guy. He's one of Jonathan's sons, actually. His name's Mephibosheth, and his feet are broken. He's messed up. He's handicapped. He's a handicapped guy, and he's living in Lo-debar. Here's the thing about Lo-debar you need to know about. Lo-debar is the place you go to when there's no other place to go to. I was in a church conference with a whole bunch of other pastors, Albert, myself, and two of our church leaders. We were in this church leadership conference earlier this week, this workshop. And I remember one pastor, he was talking about the church and the location, the communities in, and because that was what the question was like, tell us about your community. And his response was, my community, and that's what he said, my community is the community everyone goes to when there's no one else left to go. He's like, I've asked members of my community, why are you here? Why do you live here? And not a one of them said, because it makes my work commute easier. Not a single one of them said it's because the school system's really good. Not a single one of them said because I love the homeowners association. I love the parks and recreation centers here. I love that there's a Java Juice down the street. No, that didn't happen. No. I'm here because it's the only place I can afford. It's the only place I can go. I don't have any other options. My hope and my dream of everyone in this community is to get out of this community. Moving on up to the where? Moving on up. Yeah, some of you know. To that penthouse apartment. There you go. The younger kids are like, what? Tell them later. Do me a favor. Let them know. Yeah, that's the dream. Get out of here. Lo-debar was that place. It's the place you dream to get out of. It's the slum. It's the ghetto. It's the refugee camp. It's the last resort. It's the end of the line. It's the end of the road. It's the place that the pizza delivery guys don't go to after 8 p.m. I want to deliver pizza. You're living Lo-debar? Click. No, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You call the police for a purse robbery in Lo-debar, it takes them 2 hours to show up and they got 5 of them. No one goes there at night. This is not the place you hang out. This is the place, it's the elephant graveyard. It's where you go to die. Ziba is giving him this information again to talk David out of this. The guy's handicapped. Listen, he's not a problem. He's handicapped. He lives in Lo-debar. I mean, come on. The guy can't even afford his own place in Lo-debar. You want to talk about poor beyond poor? I mean, that's cheap rent, and he's still rooming with somebody. The guy's not a threat. David won't have it. Bring him to me. Again, if it's my life or his, you're the boss, sir. Aye, aye, Captain. And they bring him. Verse 6, and Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth answered, behold, I am your servant. And David said to him, do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. And I will restore to you all the land of your Saul, your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage to him and said, Mephibosheth says, What is your servant that you should regard for a dead dog such as I? He then called Ziba, Saul's servant, and he said to him, all that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson, and you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons, 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, according to all that the Lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table, like one of his own king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, and he ate always at the king's table. Now he was both lame in both feet. Why the repeat? We'll talk about that in a second, but here's the interesting thing. Here's where the story breaks down. Here's where the unexpected kind of gets twisted for once, and there's really two twists. Here's the first one. He goes, Mephibosheth, so glad to see you. Mephibosheth, like, oh boy, here it comes. We all know how the story's supposed to play out. He's like, oh, get up, get up, get up. Mephibosheth, I got something to tell you. Your dad was a good friend of mine. Best friend. Magnificent friend. I wouldn't be surprised if he said, gosh, you kind of look just like him. Some sons just look like their fathers. May have been him. I don't know. May have been. And he goes, you know what? Your dad and your grandfather, they had a lot of land before the whole king thing happened. And let's be real. I mean, theoretically, if things played out the way they should have, this probably should have all been all yours. So I'll tell you what. Your dad had some land. The government reclaimed it. I'm going to give it back to you. It's all yours. Again, you're living in Lodabar, for crying out loud. I'm going to give all this land back to you, and land meant money. But I know that you're in a current situation here, so to sweeten the deal, your dad and your grandfather had a servant. His name was Ziba. He has a pretty big family and servants of his own. I'm going to see to it he takes care of that land for you. So you don't have to go out. You don't have to till any ground. You don't have to plow any, nothing. They're going to take care of it for you. And all I ask in return, I only ask for one thing, and that is when it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you're at my house and you're eating and sitting next to me. What do you say? And Mephibosheth's response is, why would you care much for me, a dead dog? He brings Ziba in, gives him the orders, and then we see the conclusion of the story. Sure enough, what happened, what David said was gold, and it was good as gold. Mephibosheth gets land back. He has a home he can call his own. He has a kingdom, essentially, that he can now reign and rule from. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he sits at David's table as one of his sons. But then the very, very last phrase of this chapter, the very last sentence, now he was lame in both feet. Why the repeat? Why the repeat? It seems we've established this. Why are we saying it twice? And I think this is where the beautiful secret and the beautiful truth of this passage comes, is the repeat. Two things happen here, one on the surface and one a little bit underneath the surface. Let me tell you the one that's underneath the surface first. Here it is. In Hebrew, the original language of the Old Testament, the word used for both the first time when Ziba mentions him, how he's lame in both feet, how he's broken, how he's handicapped, and the word that's used at the end, now he's lame in both feet, was not the same word. English translations usually put it as the same word. They'll say he was lame in both feet, he was handicapped. It wasn't the same word in Hebrew. The first word that is used is nakeh. Nakeh is the first word used. Nakeh is a very interesting word to use. So interesting, in fact, in the entire Old Testament, outside of this narrative, nakeh is only used and mentioned twice. It's only mentioned twice. On a side note, in 2 Samuel chapter 4, something worthy of note is, how did he get this way? How did he get broken and handicapped? We see in 2 Samuel chapter 4, when Jonathan and Saul were killed, the house of Saul grabbed everything they could and ran, including Mephibosheth's nanny, who was employed by Saul. When word came that they were dead, the nanny essentially picks up Mephibosheth and runs for her life. And in running for her life with Mephibosheth in her arms, she trips and falls over and lands on top of him and breaks his legs. There's no time for medical staff. He wasn't born this way. These weren't the cards he was initially dealt. He was given a lot of promise, and then he breaks his legs and they're shattered. There's no need we don't have time for medical attention. Get up and go. And this is what got him here. But the first word, the word that Ziba uses, is nakeh. It's only used twice in the entire Old Testament. One time outside of this narrative. Here's what it always denotes. It doesn't just denote a physical handicap, it denotes a spiritual brokenness. It's one thing to have some bones broken. It's another thing to be destroyed. You know, if you break someone's arm in a fight, they might still fight. You break someone's spirit in a fight, there ain't going to be much fight left. This is a man who is literally, to his core, broken. And we see it in the context. He refers to himself as a dead dog. Dogs are unclean in Hebrew culture. In Orthodox Jewish households, you'll never find a dog if you didn't realize. Dogs were unclean animals. They're like on pig level. You know, most of us know they don't do pork. Yeah, they don't do dogs either. Dogs are considered an unclean animal. Orthodox Jewish families this very day don't carry dogs in their house. You're a dead dog. I am unclean. I am unworthy. He declares himself that. I live in Lodabar. I live in the place no one wants to live. This is who I am. I am nothing. I am a speck. I am a gnat. He is destroyed. He had all the promises in the world, and all the promises were taken from him. It's one thing to lose money. It's one thing to lose your house. It's one thing to maybe lose your ability to walk and run. It's another thing to have all that happen all within like a day. The bad day to end all bad days. And he had it. And he gave up. A guy with no will to live. A guy whose greatest news in his life would be, there's no tomorrow for me. That would be a good day for him. He was destroyed. He was broken. He was without any hope. At the end of the chapter, the word used is paseach. Paseach. Here's what it means. He was handicapped. He had 2 broken feet. See the difference? When we see him, he's broken with no hope in the world. When we see him again, his feet don't work. That's the difference. A man who's destroyed with no hope versus, his feet just don't work. He's living good. Life's good. He doesn't walk. But whatever. The difference. A grace that is greater than our circumstance. A grace that is greater than our circumstance. He still couldn't walk. The story, and again, if this was just a fairy tale, the writer of the fairy tale, don't they read fairy tales? I mean, Aladdin doesn't like win the day and then become the street rat again. That's not how it works. That's not how the story goes. He becomes the king, right? You kiss the princess and you get married. That's how it works. The kid couldn't walk. He's supposed to be like walking now. But that's not what happened. It was a grace greater than a circumstance. Something I say often and something I'll now say again. The Old Testament, and I tell my youth this a lot, it points to something. It points to someone. Step back and look at the big picture of our story, shall we? We have a person who is broken, with no hope in the world, deserving of nothing, completely unclean in the eyes of God, who then comes before the king, who for the sake of a family member who died, looks upon this person who can give them nothing good and immeasurably gives them, by definition, riches they don't deserve. We call that grace. And invites them to sit at the king's table. Tell me, folks, have we heard this story before? You may absolutely applaud for that. We come to God with nothing but our sinfulness and our disgrace. And because of the sake of Jesus Christ, we are given grace beyond our circumstance and grace beyond our life. And we're invited to sit at his table. Here's the reality. Like I said, that's the underneath. Here's the big picture. Here's the obvious one. Ultimately, his circumstance didn't really change. His circumstance, again, if this is a fairy tale, I mean, it's a terrible fairy tale. The fairy tale is supposed to say that he walked and did jumping jacks and lived happily ever after. That didn't necessarily play out the way we think it would play out. Here's the reality and truth for us. It works the same way. Sometimes the story doesn't play out the way we think it's supposed to play out. because it's what we want and not necessarily what we need. It takes maturity to see that. Sometimes we want Skittles, but what we need are vegetables. Sometimes what we want is a happy day, but what we need is a dark day to remind us how much we are truly loved. I did an exercise with the youth this past Wednesday, and the exercise was simply this. I asked a few of them to share moments in their life where they experienced true unconditional love from people in their lives. Here's the common ground for the stories that were shared. They all came out of deep and dark moments. Every single one of them. That moment where they experienced true unconditional love came out of moments where it seemed so hopeless. Came out of moments where it seemed so dark, where it seemed so bleak. Guys, it came out of moments where they were so broken, with no hope in the world. And it's in those dark moments we get to see and experience a grace beyond our circumstance, a love that can change us. He still couldn't walk. His spirit changed. The feet weren't the problem. The heart was. The mortgage isn't the problem. The heart is. And that's hard to see sometimes, because what we see and what we want and what we need comes out to maturity. Sometimes the things that don't need fixing is all the stuff out here. Sometimes the thing that needs fixing more than anything else is within ourselves. I don't need my circumstances to change. I need me to change. I don't need my workplace to change. I need my attitude to change. And I might be beyond the ability to do it within myself. I might need something. I might need someone who can change me from the inside out. It all points to something. It all points to someone. Yeah, Mephibosheth, he never walked again. The feet didn't work, but his heart changed. The circumstance didn't change. He may have wanted it to change. His heart changed because of a good king who, for the sake of someone he loved, gave grace to someone who didn't deserve it. Where are we today? Where do we go from here? I'm going to ask the worship team to come on up. Come on up. Where do we go from here? Here's how we go from here. Perhaps you realize that in your life, maybe you say to yourself, I'm the one who needs to change. I could use that grace. I could use that love. I'm going to be here up front. If you want to know what it means to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, to truly begin a relationship with a God who loves you like that, I'll be up front. Love to talk to you about it. Maybe there's things going on in your life, you just need someone to pray with you. I will be more than happy to pray for you. Maybe you're looking for a place you call a church home, a place you can rest your hat, if you will, and you haven't officially done that here at Holiday Hill. Gosh, we'd love to have you. I'll be up front. But this is called our time of response. Worship team is going to start, and they're going to start singing. I'm going to be up front. And if you want to build that relationship with Jesus Christ, now is your time. If you need to have a moment where you just pray with God and get some things right today, saying, God changed me, God changed my attitude, now's your time. If you're looking for a moment to say, I want to be a part of this church family, now's your time.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you have any questions or have made a decision to follow Christ, we would love to hear about it. Please contact us at office@holidayhillbc.org or call us at 904-721-0721. And remember, God loves you.